44 school records. That is it. You know what? I give you a lot of crud. You weren't bad, Klatt. You were pretty good.
You know, it's better to be smart than good. I went to a school that used to run the option. That's how you do it.
That is no kidding. You are. There you go. Good call. So I look at these quarterbacks, and I've said this 2 or 3 times today. When smart people do things, and I think they're smarter than me, I may not agree, but at some point I think to myself, well, smart people run the world. Kyle Shanahan knows more football, forgets more than I'll ever know, and he's in on Mac Jones. And I thought last night, okay, quit trying to be right. What does he see that you don't? And I thought, there's a stat out there. The most passing yards in the first 16 games of an NFL career for a quarterback. Mahomes is 1. Nick Mullins is 2. And Shanahan's saying, I don't want an athlete. I don't want a guy freelancing out of my offense. I just need a guy that'll sit back there, pre-snap, all design the play. This is what Matt LaFleur told Aaron Rodgers. Stop freelancing. You're freelancing out of my plays. Run the offense. You'll be great. Aaron Rodgers had his best year in a decade. So I look at Mac Jones and I have all these doubts and I think, Shanahan's saying, listen, I'm the star, not the quarterback. Just deliver. I'll get us there. Do you think I'm nuts on that?
I mean, that's how I feel when I come on and talk about college football. I need you to just get out of the way, right? No, I think that's accurate, and it's one of the reasons. Listen, I'm high on Mac Jones. Now, I don't think I would take Mac Jones over Justin Fields, but for a guy like Kyle Shanahan, he looks at the success that he's had with quarterbacks in the past, right? Whether it's Matt Schaub, who he had a lot of success with, or a guy like Matt Ryan, who he had a lot of success with. What those guys do well is that they're anticipatory throwers. They throw with great touch down the field, and they understand defensive structures. They can play from under center. They can play from shotgun. They're good in play action pass. They're good in drop back pass. They can manipulate the defense underneath. They can throw the layered ball. So it's a well-rounded quarterback, and it's not necessarily a guy with a skill set that's going to just blow you away, right? Because let's face it now, even with a guy like Mahomes doing what he's doing, or Lamar Jackson doing what he's doing, or some of these other guys with unbelievable skills, it still takes a guy that's going to sit into the pocket and control the game, right? That's what a quarterback does, and to a large extent, that's what Mac Jones did. Now, there are some concerns with Mac Jones. One is, he only played 1 year. He also played with the best players around him. So how does that convert? I've talked a lot with Matt Leinart about this and how that affected him from going to USC to going to the NFL, and how all of a sudden the level of competition was fair and leveled out. And you don't have, Devontae Smith on the outside. You don't have Jalen Waddle. You don't have Najee Harris. You don't have Steve Sarkisian designing the plays for you creatively. So, listen, to your point, I think Kyle Shanahan could have a lot of success with a guy like Mac Jones. I just think he might be a reach up there where the 49ers are at.
So you do a lot of Big Ten games. I like Justin Fields, a little inconsistent. But there's obviously, if San Francisco's taking Mac Jones, there's stuff people see they don't like. Now, I said this, I'm not sure if I said this last week. Yeah, I think it was last week. I said, whereas Alabama dominates their conference, but they still have to face Georgia and Auburn and Florida and LSU, NFL players everywhere. The gap between Ohio State's talent and even a Penn State's pretty darn large. And that, like Ohio State quarterbacks, boy, you can run those underneath routes to Paris Campbell, and they're 6. And sometimes stats for Ohio State quarterbacks are a little deceiving, whereas Mac Jones still has to beat LSU's personnel. Is the knock on Fields maybe we don't know really what he is because Ohio State's personnel is so much better than everybody else they face?
Well, I mean, I think you could say that about Bama last year, right? And I think that the SEC was a little bit down last year compared to what Alabama was. It's interesting that you bring up this narrative around Ohio State quarterbacks because it's actually false. And I'd sit back for a second because it's statistically inaccurate. Okay, Justin Fields is a far different player than what Dwayne Haskins was. This is the comparison, right? This is what people are starting to say is well, it's the same offense under Ryan Day, and Dwayne Haskins hasn't panned out. And so maybe this field stuff is not quite what we think it is because it's overblown because of Ohio State. But they played far different games. Let me just give you an example. Do you know that Dwayne Haskins, in his year under Ryan Day, he was 41st in the Power 5 among quarterbacks in terms of production before yards after the catch, so air yards.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
how many yards, how much of his production was just through the air? He was 41st, okay? It was around 50% of his production. So he was throwing to guys like Terry McLaurin and Paris Campbell, and he was utilizing the speed, and they were killing Don Brown's defense at Michigan State with the crossing routes. And he was very accurate as a tall passer, just getting the ball out almost like a dart thrower. Bang, 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 bang. Okay, now how was that different than Justin Fields? Well, okay, Haskins was 41st in the Power 5. Both seasons that Justin Fields just played at Ohio State, he was the number one quarterback in the Power 5 as far as production through the air. Okay, so this guy was much more of a down-the-field passer than was Haskins. It was a totally different offense. 70% one year, 71% the other in terms of his production being through the air rather than after the catch. It's part of the reason why he holds the ball in the pocket. Why? Because they were attacking down the field. When you're running down the field intermediate and deep read routes, which they did quite often with a guy like Chris Olave, who's a silky smooth wide receiver from the slot, what you have to do is hold the pocket so that you can read the middle read in the intermediate zone. That's very difficult to do for a quarterback. Did you also know that he was one of, if not the most accurate passer when he did throw the football down the field? The narrative about Justin Fields is completely false, folks. All right, the numbers back it up. If you turn on the film, that backs it up. And even this whole narrative that he's inconsistent, totally false. He had one bad game in his college career. It was Indiana. He was forcing the football. He learned from it. Did you know that the next time that they got into some trouble against Northwestern when they didn't have Olave on the field as a wide receiver, what did he do? He managed the game beautifully. His statistics wouldn't blow you away, but he was getting them into the right run play to the tune of Trey Sermon's breaking the Ohio State single-game rushing record that Eddie George had held. He ran for over 300 yards. Then he goes out against Clemson and maybe has one of the best performances that we've ever seen. Take Justin Fields in the draft. My goodness, this narrative is totally false, and that's why I think any of those teams up there should absolutely look at him with a second look and draft him when they can.
That's pretty good. Yeah, you were worth your money on that one. All right, now I'm going to throw you a real zinger. So I have this thing that whatever you're good in life, you will lean into. You know, if you're a big buff guy, you'll go to the gym and wear a Smedium T-shirt. If you're a singer, you'll sing in the shower, sing in the car. So Zach Wilson is, quote, great in chaos. Yeah, so is Brett Favre, and he's the all-time leader in picks. Is that if you're good in chaos, you kind of like chaos. You get a little addicted to chaos because you're good at it. And I look at the Jets and I think, well, God, the whole organization's chaos. I don't want more chaos. I look at Zach Wilson and I think, can he play in structure? It's great to be great in chaos against Air Force. Okay, last year BYU's schedule, because of the pandemic, was the worst schedule they'd played in years. Usually BYU plays a good schedule. And I hear all this Zach Wilson chaos stuff and I think, I don't want my quarterback. Maybe that worked in the gunslinger era. 99% of Mahomes' touchdowns are not in chaos. What do you make of that? Zach Wilson's great in chaos.
Part of it is that he relies on his arm a little bit too much. And it's an epic arm, Colin. I got to, like, he makes some throws. When you watch BYU play, and I don't care the level of competition, he makes a few throws every game that just like make me, I watch film on my iPad, right? And I just like put the iPad down and I'm like, wow, like what would that be like to throw the football like that? That's, His off-platform arm talent is as good as I've seen in a long time. Now, it's not Mahomes, but the dude can absolutely sling it. And to your point about we tend to lean into what we're great at, part of the thing with Zach Wilson is that he knows he can make every single throw.
Right.
So he doesn't take what I would call the bunnies or what the defense gives you right away. See, some quarterbacks understand that they have to take what the defense gives all the time, and then when a big play arises, then they're going to hit the defense. Whereas Wilson thinks that he can create a big play with that arm talent at any moment. That can be problematic in the NFL, and I think he's going to have to learn how not to do that. He also played behind absolutely his best offensive line in his 3 years last year. And when you're talking about the margin between the offensive line and the competition's defensive line, it was dramatic. That offensive line was really good for BYU. So he had a lot of time. He was able to sit there. Because of that, I think he got a false sense of confidence that he could sit around and then utilize that arm to make big time throws. Now, he's a salty competitor. I think he's a really talented player. There's no doubt about it. And when he did play Power 5 competition in previous years, whether it was USC or Tennessee, he played really well. So even though their schedule wasn't great, I think that you can still say that this guy can rise to the occasion when the playing field is leveled. I certainly think he's an early first-round pick. I wouldn't take him before Justin Fields, but that's only because Fields consistently was a more accurate passer, played in a system that I think translates to the NFL a little bit better and sooner than a Zach Wilson. And Wilson at times can just sit there and rely on his arm. Fabulous player, there's no doubt, but there's some things that are going to have to iron itself out.
By the way, we talk a lot of quarterbacks because you have 44 Colorado records, and we have to acknowledge you are a guru at that. But let's defense for a second. It is a weird draft where at the top of the draft, it's quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends, O-linemen. Yes. A couple years ago, it was all defense in the top. Now it's all offense. Who is the best defensive prospect out there?
Yeah, good question. I think Micah Parsons would probably be, your answer from most people, and I certainly would second that. He's a terrific player, right? Great instincts. He can play all over the field. They played more zone coverage than man. It was a heavy zone scheme. So I don't know what he is from a coverage standpoint, because remember, he was more of a defensive end in high school and then moved back. So playing in space, I think, is going to have to iron itself out, but he's very talented. Here's a guy to just keep your eye on, because I think he's a hybrid player that's going to fit. And if somebody has a plan for him, he's going to do really well. That's Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Right? This guy is a playmaker, and he's going to slip because people are going to be like, well, I don't know where he fits. But if somebody has vision and a plan for Owusu-Koramoah, I think they're going to get a great player.
It's funny you talk about that. I remember having an NBA GM 20 years ago tell me that. He goes, Bob Whitsitt told me this. It was the Blazer GM. He said, we're moving into an era of the positionless players in the NBA. You got 6'9" guys can handle the ball. Ben Simmons is a 6'10" point. You're seeing it in the NFL, too. Guy's a great athlete, and you're just moving him all around. Quarterback, best athlete in high school now plays quarterback. You're seeing Isaiah Simmons, Clemson. You're seeing this more and more where, okay, we got this kid. I mean, Kyle Pitts, is he a receiver or tight end? If he lost 8 pounds, he's a wide.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, I do think we're getting to a point now where if a guy's Honey Badger's always been that for me. All I know is instinctively, he's about the best football player. Instinctively, he's always around the ball.
Yeah, not every single time. This is a gross generalization, but when you take a guy that fits neatly into a box because of measurables and other types of things that are not just play on the field, they tend to underwhelm on the field versus guys that are just like, hey, my coach used to say this term. We always used to roll our eyes, but hey, man, he's just a football playing Jesse, right? Owusu-Koramoah is just going to make plays.
Right.
Find a place for him on the football field, and he's going to impact the game positively for your defense.
Yeah, in fact, I had a general manager tell me a month ago, and Greg Cosell echoed this: right tackle, left tackle. Increasingly, can you play tackle? I may move you. If Slater for Northwestern, he can play either tackle or either guard.
Well, and remember now, I think that left tackle used to be a bigger deal when teams were predominantly right-handed, and I'm not talking about just the throwing arm of their quarterback. I'm talking about their run strength. When I first came up in football, it was like you put your best offensive lineman on the right side, and your right side running schemes were better than your left side running schemes. It was just teams were right-handed. So what happened? They generally put their tight end to the right side, and these were inline tight ends. And when you have an inline tight end, even in a passing play, that defensive end doesn't get a clean rush on the right tackle. So that's why it was always more important to have a good pass protector as your left tackle. Well, guess what we don't have anymore? Really any strength as far as right or left. And we also don't have a ton of inline tight ends. So the right tackle is on an edge just as much as the left tackle is. And to your point, I think it's absolutely accurate. You've got to have 2 really good pass protecting tackles. And I think that was evident in the Super Bowl when Kansas City just could not keep Patrick Mahomes upright or into the pocket.
I love these opportunities to teach you about the game, Klatt. That's why I bring you on. It means a lot to me to just give you a little edge you didn't have before you showed up.
Oh, you're a beaut. I got to tell you, absolute beaut. 44 school records. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, some of them are
Very
even
true.
impressive. Yeah. All right, Klatt.
There were a couple that are okay, not all of them.
Good seeing you, buddy.
You too, bud. Have a good one.
Joel Klatt. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.